Welcome to our podcast, The Movement Odyssey, a collection of journeys through dance.
And today our guest is the dynamic duo. You may know them as Slowdanger, but welcome Anna Thompson and Taylor Knight.
All right, so we are here with Slowdanger, Anna and Taylor. Can you guys just give us like a short little bio of like who you are, where you came from, anything you want to include just for like anybody that is watching, hopefully we have people.
Yes.
For our viewers.
All the viewers out there. Yeah. My name's Taylor Knight. I am a graduate of Point Park University, 2012, and more recently a faculty member there in the modern dance department. And outside of working at the school, I am a freelance performer. I co-direct and run a company alongside my partner, Anna, called Slowdanger. We do various types of performance and multidisciplinary practices through facilitation, workshops, performances. We also are composers and sound designers.
Yeah, I'm Anna Thompson. I am also a graduate of Point Park University in the jazz program. I'm originally from Baltimore and grew up in Frederick, Maryland. I live in Pittsburgh now. I'm co-artistic director of Slowdanger alongside Taylor, as well as participating collaboratively through Slowdanger and myself in a lot of other kinds of projects such as dance pieces, films, composer,
Excellent.
yeah, facilitator, and I also was faculty at Point Park since 2020.
Yeah. So in class, we have had like multiple discussions about how both of your times here at Point Park and just like what they've involved. So what would you say is like the greatest lesson that you've learned at your time here?
In teaching there?
No, as a student.
As a student, okay.
Sober, but yeah.
I think for me it was that I think there's like two things that really stick out, one of which was kind of learning what you don't want is just as important as learning what you do want. And I think another one would be that like my journey in my art and career is kind of entirely my own to make. Like there's guidance, but like me as the individual makes the choice about what I see success as.
Yeah, I think for me, some similarities, definitely realizing that, not one place can give me everything that I'm interested in or can give me all the tools or all the skills that I might feel like I need. So graduating, I kind of started to realize that, similar to what Anna said, like knowing what you don't want to do, but knowing that what you've learned or the way that you've been facilitated to learn certain skills, they can support you in many areas that maybe don't align with successes that the school might see, or that I had to see the things I was getting as not like the techniques and the styles that I have to pursue, but they're tools that can support me and I can use them in different ways as I'm kind of working towards the things that I was interested in or wanted to do.
And also I think in that sense, like tying back, it's like your success is your own to create based off of like your own particular journey. And I think if you really believe and commit to that journey, the kind of the institution doesn't really even know what success might be in the future, so they might come back around to validate it.
Lastly, I can say like my time as a student, I realized that it's kind of also, you can't, a career is not just going to be like handed or laid out. Like there's got to be a lot of space for me to discover and me to go learn things through going and having the experience. And not everything can be learned in the classroom or learned the way that it was being shown. I had to actually kind of take my own initiative and proactivity in myself and take, again, those tools that the school gave me to then go and like learn new things or get involved with other projects.
That's a cool idea of just like broadening what the terms of success or what a career can be past what we're like often like shown. I think in institutionalized dance forms, like it's very much like, oh, you got to get a company, you got to get booked, you got to have an agent. But it's like, I could not want to do any of those things. Like even Colleen, like she ended up being a dance historian, but like she went through all of this, like her idea of success was like in the same, she learned in the same format, but it was just like a different career set by far. Which is
Totally. And
definitely.
your idea of success might change multiple times throughout your career. And that's also amazing.
And there might be multiple ways success looks, you know, I think depending on the individual. And yeah, I definitely had to learn that lesson too, that I don't have to prove something to these outside figures. You know, they gave me, again, the tools or the experiences, but I get to decide what the success is.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, so Taylor, in class, you've spoken about an accompanist here at Point Park, Charles, encouraging your introduction to music creation. How would you say your interest with sound progressed from that point?
From that point, I think Charles, as well as PJ, those musicians in the room were very open to dialogues and being supportive. And I told you that story about Charles bringing me this kind of little drum machine toy to try out. And I think from there, it really, I think I needed to have a hands-on experience with something. I need to kind of take something and go into my little cave with it and really explore. I think the shortest answer could be it just got me more and more, you know, the bit by the bug of wanting to dive into creating and finding that practice for myself. So I dove into a lot more research of what different tools and gear is out there that people are using. I tried to broaden the music that I was listening to, and through meeting folks like PJ and Charles, I was exposed to a lot of different kind of music as well. So it really started to open my perspective of what sound can be and the idea of an environment or a world that can be built through those kind of sonic presences. So that experience with Charles, I think I just felt seen and encouraged in a way by somebody that I saw as like such a accomplished and beautiful artist and musician, that it kind of just gave me that confidence, like, okay, I'm gonna go figure this out. Like Charles is encouraging me too. So maybe this intuition I'm feeling means something and I got to see this through.
And Anna, were you also interested at that point, or did it kind of like was Taylor starting and then you started getting more interest and started like your own journey with music?
Yeah. So I was trained as a vocalist for basically, I think, since I was in middle school, because I was really grinding that kind of musical theater pathway. So I trained in kind of musical theater and classical vocal styles, as well as some piano. And I think I always felt really bound by the technique of the way that my voice was supposed to sound through those kinds of styles that I was learning. And that those ranges dictated the roles that I would play on stage. And as a soprano, I was like really bored with the kind of ingenue role. And I was also like simultaneously very interested in electronic music, just from it kind of being a part of my own research and interests. Also from like my cousin who threw raves and my other cousin who was a filmmaker, just like getting into kind of ambient as well as like dance music. And I so I started vocalizing and trying to reclaim my voice in Judith's composition class. So I would create sometimes these kind of vocal accompaniments to the compositions I was making. And that's where Judith was like, hey, you should check out Meredith Monk, who's like a really awesome kind of musician, performer, choreographer. And I was also kind of simultaneously exploring that a little bit in Pearland's class, definitely with the support of Charles always was like, you have a voice, you have to let it be heard, which I really, really appreciated. And then a witch house band with my roommate, and we made some like spooky like DIY music, and then simultaneously started to kind of play with GarageBand. And I feel like and kind of I was friends with musicians, so kind of being in the kind of circulation of that community and seeing shows from artists whose music I was like really into, and beginning to be like, oh, what processes are they using? What instruments are they using? What kind of sound would I desire? What kind of accumulation of sounds am I really trying to like alchemize? And I think improvisation was really important in that. And Taylor and I made some like really early like films together that we then would score. So we would like shoot the film and then we would like score the film together with like making weird kind of like ambient. We had our first track was called Aquatic Geese.
Aquatic geese.
So yeah, so it
Go online somewhere.
yeah, just like realizing that like I have perhaps been in research for this for far longer than the intentional journey of like taking the step to make music, because music was so influential to me and also a part of my practice as a vocalist. And yeah, really resourcing community again, meeting people that were kind of making locally, asking about their processes, improvising together and learning more through those kinds of spaces of skill sharing and creating together.
And I think it related when Anna was talking, I started thinking about the topic of success that we were talking about a few minutes ago, because I think I had to, there wasn't I think back when I was younger at Point Park, there wasn't a lot of talk about, we weren't exposed to a lot of multidisciplinary art practices within the academic structure, like what we were taking. You had artists like Prolan and other people who were making work and kind of bringing musicians and folks together, but there wasn't as much encouragement for that. So there was definitely some challenging times too with like, well, now I want to make music, but I'm this idea, but you're a dancer, but which one are you? And it's like, I don't care. Like maybe I'm neither, or maybe I'm both. So that related to that journey of success. And I think Anna mentioning that notion of like community members, that was really one of the biggest resources. You meet friends who, oh, I have a drum machine, you should come and try it out, or oh, take the, borrow this, or let's just jam together and start to record some things, or here's a program that might work. So I think I had to like kind of get away from for a little bit of it, the dance environment that I was in, because there was also sometimes it felt like, don't let that be a distraction sort of thing from dance. So I just thought those related when I was listening to Anna, so I wanted to tie that together.
All right, moving back towards like more so movement focus and dance, who do you think you would credit your current mindset around dance towards? Either like it could be like a mentor or just someone that you've always looked up to or currently look up to.
I think it's hard to pinpoint to one, I think, because like I'm trying to think what the term is. Like I feel like Taylor and I really exist really broadly in a lot of different communities, and we kind of like try to receive what we need and give what we can in each space. So I feel like it's like in that way, like it can't be one person, because there's so many kinds of like voices or mentors that have like provided many different facets of like what we take into what we do now.
And also some of that is through like the experience of watching your friends or colleagues kind of pursue that version of their career path as well. So you're kind of you're each other's mirrors in a different way, or each other's support. So definitely what Anna said, there's these multiple figures that I could name, but I think in the terms of facilitation, which we've all had that experience together in the room and in classes, I think I had an idea of what teaching a dance class is like. Like this is how you put it together, and these are how things go. But when I started going to work with Sidra Bell in the module program and seeing how she held space, how she facilitated space, how she used her voice and directives and imagery and all these different kind of entry points, I think that specifically shaped my approach to facilitating and trying to hold a classroom in a big way. Many other folks too, but Sidra is definitely one that sticks out in that sense of how technique and these things we all understand as dancers can be facilitated through some alternate lenses that might help us enter them without some of the constructs we may carry.
And technique is kind of a materiality to be expanded and used flexibly. And I think that like being kind of mentored by Sidra and also co-facilitating at certain moments together, like that I think has really sunken deeply in me and resonated from someone that like always kind of struggled to like really fall into one system. And that there are people around us that kind of obliterate that and allow like that is the expansion to be had. And I think as far as also just like we're like bringing together a lot of different voices in our teaching practice. In addition to Sidra, there's also like peers like Jasmine Hearn, like Ogemdi Ude, you know, like people that are kind of like in our kind of community that we really admire. And that we, I think, receive so much through working together or just even seeing each other's work and kind of being next to each other in those spaces. And I would also say, like, as far as Point Park too, like mentors that I had that I still take a lot of like what they offered into the space would be like Danielle Pavlik and just like really breaking down and kind of like spiritualize, not like despiritualizing, but breaking down the kind of like mechanics of the body and like making it really like clear and having that kind of conversation in class, like Perlan for definite because we've worked together for so long. Also, yeah, the ways that kind of like we have to open up the structures to let magic enter the room. Marie Ramalia is a dear friend I was talking about last night with a person who almost was such a kind and intentional holder of space and director that really considers you as a whole person and creates like a practice that really allows you to be you in the space, which I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely. Kyle Richards, who was a teacher of mine in high school, rest in peace. One of the first kind of facilitators I had that was working with multidisciplinary practices. He would like accompany classes musically while teaching them. Then we'd improv, then we'd do set sequences. And it really, I had never been exposed to things like that. And I think we've mentioned to y'all in the past that we have some mime training as well. So he spent 2 years training with Mark C. Thompson, who kind of extended the De Croo mime lineage. And the reason I named that is because I think that experience with him really changed the way I thought about dance and movement and how the body can be a signal of communication through performance or through social scenarios and things like that. So I definitely credit him as somebody that really shifted. It's like my brain turned around. I was like, oh, okay, it's all different. Everything's different now. So, and I really cherish that time with him.
And even like people like our friend Juan or Ando Gusto, who's like literally like our DJ daddy. Like, I mean, we're friends. Like, he's not much older than us, but like, you know, like literally taught us like the skills that we need to do some aspects of the music work that we do that also bring in, like, I think the way that we make playlists in class and share kind of like artists and music through like community kind of relationships. Yeah. Stacy Pearl, also deeply influenced by her as like a just like mentor of like how to create spaces and structures and relationships that are broad and allow people to also be individuated in what they do.
Jason McDowell.
Yeah.
And just this sense of generosity in the classroom and commitment. There's so many. I feel like even it kind of goes back to that thing of Anna mentioning like knowing what you don't want to do. Like every experience with a teacher or a mentor or watching performances, I feel like you're taking something with you or you're filtering information to some degree. But it's nice to think about how all these different things can connect and this network that's been built.
Yeah. Like that idea of like allowing, like when facilitating, allowing space for one to be an individual, but also like being able to clearly like teach them how to like clearly define their bodies or how to use like their bodies to like signal emotion, like you're talking about. I was like, those are just like specific and finite like lessons to communicate, but you guys also do a really good job in your class of like still allowing freedom, which is just like, I don't know how that balance happens, but
Yeah. And I'd say another person that I feel like I learned so much about their class structure just from taking it and being like admiring them as like a dancer and person that holds space is Kendra Portier, because she will create these really fun systems, but kind of like it's not about achieving the thing. It's about like this kind of experience of being together, but also bringing each of our individual selves into these like shared containers that can be like really fun. Like we're just step touching, but we're having so much fun. Like,
And yeah, I mean, that sense of giving some space, I just feel like it's for artists, like allowing them to have a moment where things are okay, like let me take this over into the corner and let me try this thing out, like similar to Charles kind of let me borrow the music equipment. Like I feel like sometimes we need our own time to just look at the tool and kind of get to understand it differently. And I think that just came from Anne and I realizing that we connected to our work and through taking class through so many different entry points that maybe if we find ways to at least have space for folks to find those different entry points that people can connect more holistically or can connect at all. Because, you know, we've all probably been in those dance classes that feel very much like this is the one way to get to it, or that we're being told to get to it. So it felt important for us coming into Point Park specifically to try to provide that space for that
but then also
self-discovery.
like what you said, like those spaces also require structure
Yeah.
at times too.
Absolutely.
So like, how do we create like a skeleton that is kind of allowing for flesh to you all to bring that aspect to the kind of skeleton of
A
it.
choreographer I worked with, another one I'll name, Danielle Agami, who was a mentor at a time, often talked about like treating a concept or an idea or something we're looking at as a container. And the shape of the container can change, but knowing if there's just no container at all, then the water's just running and spilling around everywhere, and there's nothing that's holding it and allowing you to shape it. So I think at school, I never really made that perspective. I always just kind of went hard and everything all the time and had to realize, oh, there's ways to kind of use these different containers to help me get a little closer to the idea. And Danielle really showed me that too.
And they don't have to bind what is happening, you know, like I think took me a long time to come back to the fact that like boundary and like structure doesn't have to like, you know, like strangle something. Like,
No, I appreciate that. I feel like, especially in like modern technique, the structure is like so integral to the experience of the class. And I feel like a lot of teachers just emphasize sticking to the structure rather than like expanding around it because every dancer is so different. So I just appreciate in your class how like you allow us, regardless of like our position or age, to like explore the artistry, because I think a lot of people are like, you're only a sophomore, you're only a freshman, like you can only do like this much right now.
But it's also like shown me like how to like, even when I'm in a class that requires like a lot of structure, like when I'm in a jazz warm up, that's like it's on 8 and then 7, like
yeah.
like being able to like go in my own mindset and like switch it to where like it's a more of an internal warm up while I'm going through it, so I can like get something else out of it or find something new to focus on every day, or just like find a different way to explore or explain it to my body that makes sense for me. And so it's kind of like giving me that tool, so we're like, even if I am in a place that's very like codified and strict, like I can then myself to make it individualized.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Like exactly. And that's amazing. I'm just so happy that you feel that way.
Yes.
Because it's just a tighter suit, maybe, you know, like there's ones that are like pants that are a bit more roomy.
Yeah.
And then there's your like leggings, you know, but you can still move underneath them. They still
You gotta
spread.
layer up.
Yeah,
sometimes.
exactly.
I think to both of y'all's points, like it also allowed me, I think sometimes if I felt like the things were so restricted, it was hard to sometimes bring some of the intentionality or the textural work or some of the deeper corporeal somatic work into it. So for me personally as a dancer, so it's nice to have that combination of structure and freedom in a way so that I can really understand like where the sensation of what I'm trying to get across lives. And then when the hard phrases where I gotta like hit the count, hit the step the right way, I have that kind of with me.
Yeah, and I also think like as I've gotten older, like that kind of maybe more what I might have perceived as a more limiting structure, rigid structure is actually an ask to be in a really specific way in your body. And I think like that, it, like you said, it's like bringing in the like really fine specificities to the approach of something that's like systematized to teach your body something very specific. And it's like out of just like a person's or a group of people's desire to really like hone in on a way of feeling through a thing or a way of like systematizing the intangible form that we express. So it's like helped me reckon with like what might feel more kind of like dictative on my body and be like, oh, this is like this person's specific lens. And it's really interesting to be able to experience that in my body in such a like, and I'm being asked to not just like taste it, but like really like swallow it and digest it and like make it come out of me too.
And I think it goes back to maybe that first question around like things I learned. It's like I learned through those practices of like having that accountability of being in a structure or being in a choreographic sequence, hitting the step, but also having that freedom to explore. It had me realize like, oh, the things that I feel like are weird or strange about me that I'm trying to like eliminate to become like the perfect rep dancer, those are actually the things that are coming out and allowing me to deliver that's my artistry. That's my unique thing that I can connect to people with too, just like we all have. So it gave me that ability to like understand like kind of what makes me tick and like where those motors or those images that I can tap into. Because sometimes you're given a character, it's like you're this character and commit and get it across
Right.
and let it be fulfilled. It's like, okay, well, I gotta go resource where in my body that's gonna bring me to that place.
And also like acknowledging what things feel more kind of like naturally kind of like a fit on your body, and then really trying to understand why some things don't. And like for example, like Horton for me, muscle bound, hard to do. But like once you get in the system of it, it teaches your body that.
Yeah.
Versus like Graham, I come in, I have open hips, like, you know, it's like that kind of like thing that like feels but then like learning so much through the thing that like was really difficult for me to understand because it didn't come naturally. And trusting that process.
A lot of stress in that process.
Yes, for sure.
So after the pandemic caused a drastic pause in the world, specifically the arts, how is the transition back into teaching while also creating and reintroducing your own work into the community? Would you say it's changed the way you currently navigate your commitments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
we started teaching regularly.
All 2020.
Like, I've never had such a regular job pretty much ever. Like Monday through Friday, like every week. So that was like a really drastic shift for us coming from like basically 7 years of like all sorts of different things with like varied consistency. And being like these kind of chameleons and like taking the shapes of the containers that we were provided. And I think that really was helpful for us because I think that there was like a unsustainability of the way that we were existing before the pandemic that we really realized and had to reckon with. And then the kind of teaching practice help like give us some sort of like container where we were like, what do we want to shift into? Like, what do we need in our bodies? What do we see other people needing? But it was really hard to do both as things came back. Like energetically, it's really hard to teach and like as consistently as we were and trying to manage all the shit of like freelance life. And I think that it's made me realize like that there is a capacity to my energy and I can't keep pushing it, and that like there are kind of ways of there are like seasons of kind of like honing in and like exploding out with just like the way that we're existing in our careers, and we have to create a little bit more boundary around that for our own just like energetic resiliency.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another big thing that came out of that was we couldn't dance and perform as much. So we kind of turned our heads to learning more about the industry and more about running an entity, the things that are going to be annoying and difficult about that, and the things that we didn't know we needed as a support system. I hate to say the word in the business side, but in the business side of running an arts entity and trying to build a career, which is something that when I was a student at Point Park, we didn't get as much of that side of it. So that kind of concentrated focus, and I'll name a mentor through that, Phil Chan, who we worked with a lot during the pandemic, just helping us look at the grander vision of like, well, what does Slowdanger want to do in 10 years? What do you want it to look like? What do you want to be able to accomplish or be able to produce? And I think due to all that hustle Anna was mentioning, we didn't have a lot of time to like stop and be like, okay, we've been doing this for this long. Where do we want to go? Or like, what are the many different ways of success that we feel like we could hit? So dove into more ideas of building a budget and building a system of like, what if we need a project manager, and what does a position for somebody who works for us administratively look like, and start building those things out, which isn't as like exciting and fun for me, but necessary to build that container to be able to create the work.
And as we've kind of like come back into it more like full, I mean, I guess it was always all the time because we were still doing fucking virtual pieces and stuff. It's just like more physically present. Like I think that we've realized that those kinds of administrative or business aspects create more space for you to really like be in the creative process in a more free way without like having to like cycle through all the emails that you didn't fucking send that day. And also like reckoning with the fact that we're workaholics and we are addicted to the work that we do, and that is both a blessing and a curse. And that there is such a thing as too much.
Yeah.
And we're always learning that the hard way. Yeah. And trying not to learn it the hard way in the future. But I also feel like the kind of pandemic helped me really come back into studio culture and studio practice, which I love, and be like, I love class. Like, I love it, and like that is something that really also feeds what I eventually create. That like, I think Taylor have always felt like our teaching practice is still our creative practice, because the act and the art of translation, and like kind of language and like really like understanding and misunderstanding each other is another process that advances the kind of creative work that we do, because it helps us, it decentralizes our sole perspective as like, I'm an artist, you'll never fully understand me. It's like actually my responsibility to translate information. And that helps me find other ways of expressing that information.
It also probably helps with like communicating, because like when you have to like probably sell yourselves, it's probably like a lot easier to like assert like what your goals are and what your message is, and like sell.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And I think like the pandemic also helped me like get out of, it's not like it's still a journey, but like there's so much doubt and like shame and fear in this career, and like it really burned away a lot of bullshit for me, and just being like, fuck it, I don't have to apologize for what I want to do anymore. I don't have to apologize for my dancing or the ways in which I want to create work. Like people either get it or they don't, and that's fine. That's also like not my responsibility to hold. Even in that classroom, like it's not always my responsibility to have someone fully understand because they're going through their own process. And they might not get it right now. They might get it like 5 years from now. They might not ever get it. And that's not my job. My job is just to really try my best.
And I think to your point about like when you're like trying to sell your product or sell the work you're making or try to build these relationships with presenters or whatever, I think that pandemic kind of time gave us an opportunity to learn more about like, okay, what are kind of how do people communicate in these scenarios? What's the vocabulary and things that are being used? What's a technical writer? How do we make one? What's a template for like a press kit for a piece? Like all these things that you don't think about, you know, when you're in that deep grind, that I think helps us feel more confident, to Anna's point just a second ago about like, well, we know what we want to do more so, and we're not like, we're going to be a little more discerning or, you know, specific, intentional with how we engage with certain things and know more of, you know, our worth and stand up for it and have, you know, have a structure to support that.
Since Slowdanger involves so much of you two directly, what do you prioritize in your personal lives that keeps you grounded? With travel, does this change your grounding practices?
Yes.
Yes.
I try to have a weekly session with my therapist. Even if I'm traveling, we do like a video call that keeps me grounded. I think also something that we do when we're home, more so because it's harder when we're traveling, is like, or even when we're traveling, we try not to, if we don't have to, like get into administrative mode after 8 p.m. Like I just want to like not, you know, or like write grant applications or anything after 8 p.m. I also think like exercising really helps me stay grounded, and sleep well. So if I'm not as like in a heavy dance practice, I try to do my little weights or like, you know, make sure I'm like walking this body every day in some capacity so that I can like rest. I think that the pandemic really taught me that like I actually really need to be active physically. It like, or I have insomnia basically. So it's like I physically need it.
Yeah, I think that's something that came up more in the pandemic too. Like me kind of realizing what are my grounding practices when I can't, or when I am working too hard or not able to go and do the things I want to do. And it had me realize that there's an aspect to my artistic interest and practice that can also be a sense of a personal thing too. Like take off the like, okay, this is a deadline to like get this piece finished and put that on the shelf and I'll pick that up later. And let me actually just like work on some music that just feels like it's for fun or for pleasure or for research or to get in the studio and just have an embodied practice. Like Anna said, doing some strength training, going outside, like dude, especially during the pandemic, trying to have some nature time feels nice and grounding, but traveling, it does get more difficult, at least for me, to sustain certain things just because the hustle is very different, especially when it's work travel. Our cat is definitely a grounding source though on travel. We don't have her. And also therapy and also having people that like trying to have social life too. And like whether it's family or loved ones or friends that like I'm communicating with or spending time with. I think it's easy for us, Anna and I, to like hustle so hard that we don't play hard or play at all. So we also are really trying to ground ourselves in like, well, maybe we don't have to pressure ourselves and overachieve by getting this thing done today. And we can like go take a walk or cook this really ambitious meal and like have a different sense of grounding for the day. But also this definitely the self-care practice. We love playing with our outfits and stuff like that. So just like doing our thing. Like I know that's kind of a vague way to put it, but
I also think one what's been also nice is like creating enough space that there can be some level of spontaneity in my life. Not always possible, but sometimes it is. And those moments feel really like alignment moments for like things that I need kind of coming in, or really creating the space to find that. I think like also realizing that we can very easily give our time away all the time, and like when is there times that is just for us or like our alone time too. Yeah. And I think skincare is really important to me, making sure I drink enough water, also making sure that I'm like consuming enough food to like feed the effort that we're expending, because that also is like a self-care thing. Like it'll make your life miserable if you're hangry.
And traveling, it's
Yeah,
it's hard.
like
So the food prep and the thinking, right, getting that into
getting
place.
enough sleep is so important. I also like come in and out of like a morning writing practice where I either am like writing down dreams or like processing emotions. I love my Channy app, staying up to date on what's happening in the sky. That's a self-care practice for me. Yeah.
Me and my roommates, we actually have like a spontaneity rock, and it's like a small little pedal, and we like pick it up, and whenever we find it, we're like, all right, we have to do something spontaneous. Or it would be like standing on a table, reading a book or something, and then we'll just
Cool.
and then we'll just find it some point during the day, and it's like a nice little way to keep us going.
I love
cool.
that.
I
It's
love
also
that.
funny because I feel like it's so much easier for me to have that when I'm traveling. Like when I am home, it's a lot harder. I think honestly, sometimes when I'm home, like my life is way more systematized or has been in some ways, probably because of the teaching. And I'm curious about bringing that back in, since we're not
Have our
gonna be there
own
as much.
spontaneous.
Yeah, we need a spontaneity rock.
Yeah.
Like
That's awesome. I feel like a good way to kind of like close this out would be just to ask, this might be hard for you guys, but where do you think Slowdanger is headed towards in the future? Either like geographically, it could be just like potential collaborators or even project wishes, whatever you guys want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely are going to be touring a bunch between now and at least 2025 with this piece that we're making. I think there's a lot of like percolating travel. We really want to kind of get into the kind of European space. We're supposed to be touring a bit later in the year and have been building more relationships with people kind of also randomly, spontaneously, along those veins. We also are trying to spend a little bit more time on the West Coast because we feel like kind of spiritually and energetically aligned with a lot of artists out there. We just shared a bill with like a Vancouver-based choreographer. So trying to make it back up to Canada.
Yeah, I was talking with someone last night at like a friend's party thing where I don't know, I feel like now since we've Slowdanger's been around for a little bit, and we kind of have this further understanding of how to support the entity and how it can grow, just starting to think about bigger vision ideas. Like I really like the idea of set design and different site specific work. So I was talking with someone who was an architect student, and we kind of got really into it, but just really thinking of ways to, yes, right now we're working on this big like proscenium touring piece, and like how do we transform that and really build like a scenic and kind of multi-sensorial world there. So I think these kind of bigger visions of kind of more what movement theater has, and working with set and working with other theatrical elements to support the dance, which takes resources and budget and money to be able to accomplish. But yeah, I see us reaching for some bigger visions and bigger stage footprints as far as like how we can transform that environment. And I think I can see that happening more in the future.
Yeah, and I think also while I love dancing and performing in my own work, also like experimenting with ways where we're kind of like on the outside directing. Like there are some opportunities to do that coming up, and also like seeking more in that way of like how, but also still wanting to, I'm not like stepping away from dancing and performing. It's just like wanting to play in different spaces. I kind of want to get back into acting as well.
Yeah, we both had our like theater,
Yeah.
our theater moments last year, and that
it's
was
kind
really
of
fun.
already happening in some ways, like in the work that we're making. Like I hate, honestly, I hate the term dance theater. I really do, because I think a lot of things that are called dance theater are just like really bad. And like, I don't know, it's like, it's really like, there are very few people that I think label their work as dance theater that I'm like, is it though? Yeah, like it is, and I think that like really starting to work with text and like language, and like I think for me when I was growing up, acting was so play based. Not like plays, but like play, and like, you're acting games. Like I loved that shit, and wanting to bring that also back into our work a little bit more intentionally. And I think that's also because we're working with people that are also actors. So that's kind of, I would love to choreograph a musical. We've talked about this.
And I think Anna and I, we've been talking about like the notion of creating installation work, and like really bringing our kind of, I've gotten really into this idea of psychoacoustics, which is just like how we perceive sound in various spaces, and like, yeah, thinking about dance as installation as well. And again, using multiple materials, using sound pieces, using like almost creating performances where folks who are watching forget or don't care about what genre or what medium it is. They're just experiencing that kind of world or that environment. And I think that's really an underlining intention of some of the work that we make. So definitely see us kind of throwing more ideas on the board of like what our friends Anya and Mitzi, they have that a gallery space on Penn Avenue. So we've been talking about like what it could be like to explore installation practices and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see
I know,
it.
that's awesome. I can't wait.
Biggest regret.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah. And the big piece that we're going to be touring premieres in December in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
So
We'll be here.
yeah.
At the Kelly Strayhorn.
Yeah.
That's
It's gonna
awesome.
be wild. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much
Yes.
for doing this and taking
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Thanks
for having us.
asking.
Yeah, it was fun to chat.
Do you guys have like a little 5, 6, 7, 8 jingle you want to improv for us?
Ooh, like a song?
Yeah, something.
It's just a little scat, a little.
A little squeep-a-doo.
Ba-ba-da-ba. Okay. Yes.
Lydia Jasmine's podcast.
Podcast. We're on the podcast. Listen up.